Hello and welcome back to the ME7 podcast, episode 4 of Look Back Live. On January the 14th, we were on 14 points and 6 points adrift. Along come 11 new signings, a new head of recruitment and a director of football and a winning mentality. Today, on May the 13th, we sit on 55 points and safe in League 2 for another season. Not bad, eh? Yeah, welcome back to the ME7 podcast. Obviously, before we start, a massive thank you to Chris Tiger and Tiger Fire Security for sponsoring today's show. Chris does, and his business does fire alarms, intruder alarms, CCTV systems, and is also proud sponsors of Dom Jeffries, Jake Turner, Robin McKenzie, and of course, the ME7 podcast. Today, I'm joined by my co-host Owen Stanley, Matt Olsen, Reese Hurd, and Lewis Browning. Gents, good morning. How are you all?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys?
Yeah, good.
Very good.
Good, Reese?
All good, mate.
Yeah?
All good.
You should be a man of many words after your goal on Sunday.
I didn't want to be the one to bring it up, but now you've done it, yeah, it was one of my better ones.
Yeah?
For sure. Yeah.
But we've been told this morning the file's corrupted.
Yeah, let's not talk about that bit.
Should we talk about your penalty though?
No.
Okay, Lewis, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, let's just crack straight on then. Yeah, obviously, all in all, a safe season, a safe end to the season. We secured safety with 3 games to go. Lewis, we'll come to you first. It was in the end a season, I suppose, to remember. I guess a season that was very much split into 2 halves. A second half of the season that we all look back on with a memory sort of never to forget really. But yeah, all in all. Yeah, one to look back on that was okay in the end.
Yeah, I think since our title winning season, that's probably the most memorable season. Maybe even before that because of the takeover. But yeah, in terms of how it went, the cliche is a game of 2 halves. It was a season of 2 halves. Before the season, before Christmas, before the takeover, it was as bad as it got. We were destined for non-league. I've had many conversations with people saying, how far adrift would we have been had we not been taken over? How early would we have been relegated? And it would have been the case. It would have been a really, really hard year. It was hard before the takeover. We said on the show last week we stopped making content because of how negative the atmosphere was, that sort of thing. And yeah, it was hard. Everyone knows it was hard. You were coming expecting to lose. You concede a goal. It's basically done. The atmosphere was toxic. You just go back to Colchester on Boxing Day here, people singing "not fit to wear the shirt," that sort of thing. And then start of January, post Stevenage, it took off and it went as good as you could have imagined. I think we would have been second, right, if the season started on the 1st of January, something like that. So yeah, it was fantastic. The connections back there between the players and the fans. Neil Harris deserves a lot of credit for that as well, not just in terms of how he's managed the team, but the connection he sort of built. The stuff he said in the press has all been great, and we're just looking forward to a great summer now to build for next year, hopefully be competitive, and we've started that in a good way with the sign of Conor Masterson, and yeah, it's nice to be positive and the most optimistic I've been for a long time as a Gillingham fan.
Reese? Ruda?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when the takeover happened, I think whilst there was a lot of optimism, I think we all probably thought that, yes, we're going to sign some players, but there might still a little bit of a bedding in period before we start seeing the effects of that. But such was the efforts everyone put in it. It happened overnight. We started winning games right from the get-go, which in the end it was probably important we did, because despite the fact we was winning really, really quickly, it wasn't the case that 2 games after the takeover we was out the bottom 2. It still took a little bit of time. We had to, if I remember rightly, we started with the new players with a really important run of games against teams around us as well, like Colchester, Crawley, Hartlepool. So in a way, looking back, it was critical that we got off to a flying start, and we did. And no, in the end, yeah, for every bit as bad as the first half of the season was, the second half of the season was equally as good.
Oh?
Yeah, interestingly, I remember a conversation with us three were having when we left Wimbledon on opening day. I think you said to me that no team's too big or not good, or too good to go down or something like that. I remember I said that I thought it was a bit of a reaction just based on what we saw, and I was like, we're not going to be in any trouble this year. It's League Two, and obviously we were. Well, you were proved right. I was proved very much wrong. Yeah, I think Lewis is right. There's two ways of looking at it. I don't think anyone's going to look at it on the face of it and think, 17th or 19th, whatever it was in League Two is a good season this year, which it isn't. We have higher standards than that, but I think when you consider, looking back now, what we actually had in that first half of the season, I don't think anyone really knew or appreciated just how difficult a job it was for Neil until we got those new players in. And it says a lot that the majority of the starting 11 from that first half of the season aren't going to be here next year, and that's a good reason, even if the ones that are still in contracts are probably not going to be here because they got us to where we were. And look, it's a case of it's not a successful season just because we're Gillingham, we shouldn't be 17th in League Two, but I obviously understand from where we come from post-Christmas that it is considered a success. It's more relief for me that we didn't end up going the way we were going to go for a long, long time, and we've started doing things properly again in terms of getting people in behind the scenes who help impact Neil Harris, help improve the way he goes about things, makes it a lot easier. I think people don't give him enough credit for, when you see it now, for the first half of the season, he was basically doing 3 or 4 jobs all on his own as well as managing the team. So we're very lucky he stuck with us through that, and he got his just rewards in the end with a squad that he built with players that he wanted. And thankfully, like Bruce said, we got off to the ideal start because in that situation where we can't afford to bed people in. We had to get results straight away. Thankfully, we did, and I think I'd say by the Tranmere game, which I think was still a month or so before the end of the season, I think we were basically not mathematically safe. But I think everyone was pretty confident that it was done by then. Obviously, it wasn't not long after.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've got to think about this season is how incredible it was. It was a tale of two halves, just like most of the games we've had this season. They've been a tale of two halves. That first half, look, defensively, we weren't bad. The problem is we all knew we conceded a goal. That's it. We're not coming. We're not getting anything out of this game because we just couldn't score going forward. And we all believed Neil when he said in the summertime that his forwards would come in and score goals. So we were all expecting, as you said, after that first game, we're going to do something hopefully this season, and it just didn't turn out. And unfortunately, when you're getting your C, your D, your E list players, you're not getting your first choice players that you want. Unfortunately, that does happen. And everyone, I think by November, everyone just believed we were National League based, go down to it. And what a turnaround it was. And one of the things you have to believe with this team is the spirit there, because to get 11 players in, to get them playing that well, that quickly, that's not just Neil and his backroom team, that's the players themselves. They've got to have some kind of character to be able to bond that quickly. And it was brilliant to see, and it's given us all hope. And everyone knows my opinion. I think we're winning the league, by 100 points next year. We're going to win every single game, no question asked, to score 100 goals in every game. But for me, the belief is back. And as a Gillingham fan, as any kind of football fan, that's all you want to do, is you want to believe in your team, and we've got that.
Okay. Let's obviously look back at the last month or so then. 8 games in total. I think it's 8 games. Yeah, 8 games. Obviously, the one that obviously stands out is beating the champions Leyton Orient here. But we obviously started the month with a 2-1 loss at Barrow, and then beat Doncaster. We lost to Northampton. We drew Stockport. We beat Leyton Orient. 2-2 draw at Bradford. A 2-1 defeat here, and Newport in the last home game of the season, and then a 1-0 win on Bank Holiday Monday at Salford. It sort of ticked a lot of boxes in the last sort of 8 games of the month or so. Like I say, the standout results are the 2-0 win over Leyton Orient, the 1-1 draw against Stockport, the 1-0 win over Salford. It was ticking boxes in terms of beating sides that were up there. Also, an away win against the playoff side, but also being competitive against sides that were up there sort of all season. Yeah, Lewis. Yeah, I feel like we ticked a lot of boxes. How did you feel?
It started quite frustratingly the month, because that loss at Barrow was when the away form was very much still a major concern. I remember being frustrated after that game. I can't remember the result before that, but it was sort of almost we came back down to, our away form, we've got to sort it out. I know Barrow finished inside the top 10, but next year, if you want to be competing, Barrow away is the game where you want to be picking up points. There were some frustrating games in there, of course. The Newport game here was frustrating because it almost felt like we were a bit on the beach. That's the go-to saying that you've got to get with those sorts of games. But yeah, we bounced back against Salford, and those last couple of away games, Bradford, Salford, that's where you sort of think, we've got the away results. Bradford and Salford are both very strong sides in this league. If you're picking up points against them away from home next season, you're happy. Bradford, even though we were leading, getting the late point, that's probably a good point next season as well. So, yeah, happy with that. The game against Leyton Orient we'll all remember for all sorts of reasons here, with the floodlights going off and their promotion and the bizarre last 10 minutes. But yeah, lots to build on, and you're going to have consistencies. As good as we've been, we are still a new group, and we hadn't had a pre-season behind us. We'd had that run of games, but the club made it clear that their main aim was to survive relegation. And after that Leyton Orient game, when it was confirmed, you could tell by the posts on social media what the players were saying, what the coaches were saying, that had been achieved now. Even if it went down to the last minute of the last game, that had to happen, no questions asked, however way it had to happen. And our ambitions will be different next year, and the approach will change, I'm sure, but lots of positives. That Salford game in particular, I know it was the last game, but they had something to play for still. I know performances can change when you're in that situation rather than at the start of the season, but a win and a clean sheet away to a playoff side is a massive positive. And I think if we ended the season on back-to-back defeats, it'd have been a bit of a sour taste, but ending with a win, signing of Conor Masterson and going into next year, I think people are pretty much happy with that.
Yeah, Reece, what have you made of sort of the last 8 games of the season? Like I said before, that we definitely had ticked a lot of boxes. There was a couple of frustrating results in there, but I sort of like Lou said, that sort of all in all it's been a positive end to it.
Yeah, it has, and maybe in true Gillingham style, I think the last 4 or 5 games, the one game we did lose was probably the one that going into them 5 games would have said was probably the least likely to lose.
Yeah.
But no, and yeah, considering the whole obviously we started turning things around in January, February, beating teams around us in the mid-table, so on. But that big question mark people still had with him was competing with teams at the top. But I think now we actually get to the end of the season, I'd have thought that I don't know how easily accessible it would be, but if there was a table of teams' records against the teams that were in the playoffs, I think it would be quite favourable, because obviously we've beaten Orient, we drew to Stockport twice, we drew here to Stevenage, we've beat Salford, we've drawn to Bradford. So actually the teams that are in the playoffs and those that have gone up automatically, there's been a lot of them games where we have come away not being beaten. And yeah, whilst it is helpful that we do get results in them games to prove that we can be competitive going into next season, I also don't think that's the be all and end all, because the team that we're playing this season is not going to be exactly the same team that we're playing next season. But no, and also the away form, that if you look at it over, a bit like the way we say that if you look over the whole season from start to finish, 17th isn't where we want to be. It's not. If you look at the away form from start to finish, I think we're 22nd or 23rd, which isn't where we want to be. But I also think that probably since the takeover, I don't think our away form, it's not been as good as we want, because we're used to seeing the home form. We want to be like that every week. But I don't think we've actually lost that many times away from home. We've about, I think, say second half of the season, we've played 11, 12 away games. We've obviously won the 3. Salford, Colchester and Rochdale.
Yeah.
We've drawn to Bradford, we've drawn to Stockport, we've drawn to Harrogate. So it's not like we're getting beat every week. There's been games as well, like the Barrow one, like the Northampton one, where we've just been done late by decent goals. So whilst it is frustrating that we haven't picked up more wins away from home, I also don't think we're a million miles away, and I think once we do the business we're going to do over the summer, I think we'll be there or thereabouts going into next season.
How far do you think we're off them top sides?
Well, I think the form in 2023 shows we're not that far away. Do I think the current squad that we've got playing in the second half of the season could sustain an automatic charge over the course of a whole season. I'm not so sure. But listen, we've seen from how poor we were in the first half of the season that initially it was only really sort of Dieng, Nichols, Hawkins and first three signings that come in and instantly change the fortunes of the team. So I don't think it should be underestimated how big of an impact just one or two players can have. So as long as we make one or two really strong quality League Two additions, then I think we can naturally look towards taking that next step and fighting for them top three positions.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously Reece says about obviously the away form. We've noticed in the Barrow game, the Northampton game, very extremely fine margins in that one. I thought the Bradford away game for the first 45 minutes was the best football we'd played all season. I thought we were outstanding at Bradford, and I thought we were very sort of unlucky to even come away with a point. I think potentially all three. When we speak about fine margins, is that exactly where potentially a clinical striker could come into it? Nichols and Hawkins have done brilliantly for us. I just don't think yet we've got that cutting edge.
I think it does. I think the Bradford game, like you said, I think on another day, Neil Harris said himself that we could have been 2-3 up at half time, and I think it wouldn't have flattered us. I think we deserved a point at the very least from that game. And it again, like Reece said, we're not winning an awful lot of games away, but people take the optimism going into next year that we've been able to go to teams like Bradford, Salford, or whatever and get results. But I think there has been times in games this season where we're just missing maybe not even so much a goal scorer, it's more of an outlet to get us up the pitch in away games more than anything else, because there's been a lot of times where obviously naturally first half of the season, because we had the invisible man up front, it just kept coming back and back and back, and it was almost hard for a defender to get out because they're doing half the work they would normally have to do without having someone up the other end who can actually keep the ball in your position half for a bit, and we didn't really have that at all first half of the season. I think we're still lacking a little bit in the team we've got now, because Hawkins is big, but he's not someone who can really move with the ball per se, because he's not quick enough. He just doesn't have that sort of agility. Nichols can, but again, he doesn't get through 90 minutes more often than not. I think Tristan Abrahams did okay with it in terms of being able to get us up the pitch a bit more, but obviously it's not worked out for him. So I think we need just more options really in going into next season. We need obviously this goal scorer, an out goal scorer, because on the face of it, Nichols has scored 6 goals since coming in January, which would average to 12 a season if it was for a whole campaign, which is good. But he's also not someone I think would be prolific at this level. So I think we do need someone who's more, you can look at, I think, more guaranteed goals, if you like. And we'll get on to that later on with our specific transfer targets. But at the same time, I also think you need the workhorse sort of striker as well, which Tom can be, but also just someone to help get us up the pitch a bit more, alleviate the pressure that's coming back on us. Because when we played at Bradford, it was obvious second half of that game they had a lot more riding on it than we did. We maybe subconsciously sat back a little bit more, just because we knew it was all going to be back and forth. But even then, we did have chances on the counter attack. But I think it's just a little bit of a missing piece in some games, like the fine margins, where if we just have that someone who can unlock an opportunity for someone. I don't think we've seen the best of George Lapsey yet. I think he'll benefit from having a full pre-season with us, and he might be that player who steps up next season, becomes that attacking creative outlet, because we haven't. I like George, but I don't think we've seen it as much as maybe we thought we would so far. But I think it's just more fine tuning than anything else in terms of arrivals, because you think the team we brought in since January have got where they are now, second in the table since then. It gives fans a lot of optimism that, like Reece says, we're not massively far away. It's just adding those extra bit of details in there to get the team from someone's going to challenge from playoffs to then challenge a bit further as well. And I think that's a positive, that we don't have to do a massive reset of the squad, that we have all the overhauls we've seen in recent years. We can sort of take what we've done in January with the smart signings, they got us out of trouble, but also with an eye to this season coming as well, and then just fine tune a few things, get some players in certain positions and make that extra step.
Okay, mate. Matt, just obviously looking at the last sort of 8 games of the season, you've got Salford in there in the playoffs, Bradford in there in the playoffs, Leyton Orient in there, won the league, and Northampton in there obviously got promoted. Out of obviously those games, we've only been beaten by one of them. where we speak about not far off, it's even statistically not far off at all in terms of the top sides, and that's what obviously Neil Harris was speaking about in press conferences, where he says that is the challenge for the group next year, is to not only be close to them, but be then beating them on a regular basis.
The thing is, it's not obviously these last 8 games that, before that we did have technically something up to play for up until the Leyton Orient game. We needed to get over the line, so the players would have been up for it. So yes, I'm hoping that those up until that Leyton Orient game, the players were up for it. But obviously the Salford game, being last game of the season, you could have expected them to be on the pitch. The guys went there. Okay, it wasn't the greatest first half, but we really stepped up in that second half, because I think the players were not just trying to show us, what they've done this season, but they're trying to show us this is what you're going to get from us next season. And to go away and to get, what was it? I think we've 7 points, isn't it? We've got whatever it is we've got from those games. That's a brilliant return. We needed to win away. We've got that win away. That's checked off the list. We wanted to get points off the top 6 teams. We've done that. That's another check off the list. Let's take this form into next season. I generally believe, like we've all said, add a few players. Literally, I don't think there's that many that we need to add, but add a few players, a good few quality players. Sound like a broken record, but I still believe we need at least a 20-goal a season striker minimum to be competing up the top. But we get that. We're pretty much there, honestly.
Okay. Let's highlight one of the games. Lewis, Leyton Orient. It was probably the most bizarre game I've seen in Priestfield in years. Lights gone out, come back on. Leyton Orient have absolutely no interest at all in. It was almost like there had been an agreement to say, look, we're promoted, you can have it.
Yeah. I mean, it started from the red card early on, right? Because you could see how good Leyton Orient were. They brought loads of fans expecting to be promoted that day with a win, probably. And you could see early doors that they were decent. We knew how good our home form was, so we backed ourselves. We've had good results here, beat Carlisle here. We've had results against Stockport, those sort of people. So we've had results here, and I can't remember what it ended up with after the Newport loss, but it was like 9 wins in 10 or something at one point at home. And they were going to be up for it. It was always going to be a challenging game, but that red card after sort of 13 minutes or whatever it was changed things, and we scored from the free kick. So how different would it have been if he was just shown a yellow card, for example? Would we still have gone 1-0 up? You can never guess these things, but yeah, we were worth our lead, and then I suppose as soon as the lights went out, that's when the chaos hit. You've seen it at games before. The lights were off for a long time. It turned out it wasn't actually a club fault, right? But a lot of people wondering, what happens if they don't come back on, that sort of thing. And I remember looking at my phone, and Swindon were beating Bradford, and if Bradford lost, Orient would have had their promotion confirmed. And I could see it, and my dad was looking at my phone, and I said, "You'll hear it from them before you hear it from me." And as soon as they started cheering, the players were on the pitch. It was ironic or coincidence that we were literally about to get underway as that news came through, and our players were you could tell they wanted to go. And that last 10 minutes was so strange. Even watching it back, you see Max Hamer with the ball, just doing some stretches, getting moving, and a few jeers and that. From our point of view, if we were playing against 11 men and they had something to play for, we might, we'd take that. We'd probably be sitting back at that point anyway. But it was so strange. I thought the weirdest thing was that Orient still had something to play for, in terms of that they could have, they still had the league to play for, that sort of thing. But their heads weren't in that sort of space. I don't know what went on behind the scenes. I think Richie Wellen said that there was an agreement that they weren't going to compete, and that's perhaps been rebuffed from our side of things. But whatever happens, we were happy to come out of that from the win. Congratulations to Leyton Orient, but we think about ourselves in that situation, and you see the scenes and on the pitch and stuff, and you just think, I want that to be us next year. So 3 points and beating the team top of the league, you can't really ask for much more.
Yeah. Reece, do you think you'd have been annoyed if you were a team down near the bottom, near us at the time, looking at it and going, what's going on here? Like, effectively, Orient are giving Gilles safety here.
Yeah. I can see that argument, but I think if you look at it without any context, I think definitely. But I think then once it's not the fact that the game just got to 80 minutes and Leyton Orient stopped playing. I think you have to factor in the stoppage.
Yeah.
Both teams, both managers have mentioned this as well, that especially as they played so long in the game, late in the season, to stop for 20-25 minutes and come back out, very easy for someone to get injured. And in the end, yes, if you're a team down the bottom, you could look at it with a little bit of frustration, but also we're 2-0 up at home where we're very, very good and we're playing against 10 men. The chances of us throwing away that game from that position, even if Orient had tried, was very, very slim. I was frustrated by elements of our own fan base that sort of complained about what happened because, like I say, you have to factor in the injury situation. And for me, there's been plenty of times in years where lights have gone out, they don't come back on and games get abandoned. For me, the priority was get back out, get that game finished and get them 3 points in the pocket, regardless of how the spectacle looked. And like Lewis has touched on, listen, one of the things Harris gets a lot of stick about is that when we're winning games, we sit on it and we defend. So this expectation that we was going to come out after the lights come back on at 2-0 up and just go and attack for more goals, even 11v11, we probably wouldn't have done that anyway. We'd have sat in, we'd have tried to contain Orient like we had done for the rest of the game, let them have the ball. And it was just roles reversed, they let us have it and we just didn't want to do anything with it and we didn't need to. So why would we?
No, very true. Go on, mate.
Yeah, it would have been an ideal game for the Nichols header, wouldn't it? Basically on a play. Yeah, it's weird. It's like when you're playing FIFA with your mate and they're not using the controller, you try and tackle them and the ball just goes off the pitch because they're not active. I think it's a lot harder to play against a team with no interest than I think a lot of people think it is, because I think if we suddenly decided to actually start passing it about, you never know when, say we're playing a pass that their striker who's not having any interest, who might see it go past it or might actually be able to nick this, they could almost just spring into life at any time. And then if they decide actually we've got them in a full sense of security, maybe we'll go for it now, and they get one back with about 5 or so minutes to go and it becomes a bit more difficult. But yeah, it was a bittersweet night in a sense. It was great obviously because we secured safety, but it's the second season in a row we've seen the team come here, celebrate on our pitch. It's not good, it's annoying, I don't like it. Obviously it's nothing we can do about it. It was nicer than last year, I suppose, we didn't go down at the same time, but it weren't ideal. But I suppose that's more Bradford's fault than anyone else's. But yeah, it was. I know people can make the argument. I even saw people, slating Harris after that game, saying, "Well, we only won because they had the players and off." And it's like, well, and we couldn't really get a kick before that. To be fair, they were playing it around us, but once we got the goal, they didn't really create a chance of them in the first few minutes. I think there was one Morris saved before the sending off, but after that, I think we controlled it pretty well. We grew in confidence. We knew we had the advantage, and obviously we see it with Shea at the end. I think he put us that in a minute or two before the lights went out, didn't he? So I think it was a deserved victory, and obviously the implications it had was obviously great for us and great for them as well, unfortunately. But nothing we can do about that. We did our job, and yeah, it's another box ticked, regardless of how people might want to spin it and say, well, we only did it because of this, we only did it because of that. The fact is we won the game 2-0. You can't argue with that.
Yeah, because in that situation, Matt, 10 men, you can quite easily find it hard. Sometimes I think you can find it harder to break down 10 than you can 11, and certainly against a side that have obviously gone and won the league now. But I thought we sort of just took the game to Orient and exploited that space really, really well that evening.
Yeah, we did, and as Lewis said, obviously once the sending off happened and we got that free kick, even if the player had been yellow carded and we'd still scored that goal, we would have been 1-0 up, and I think we were up until that point, and I know for the first probably literally 10 minutes they were all over us, but after that sort of 10-minute period, you could see us kind of starting to get a few passes together, starting to grow into the game. Obviously, the sending off is a big thing for that game, but we then, go ahead, we scored a goal, and then we controlled it. And yeah, I know Leyton Orient probably were thinking at the time, well, look, this is going to be extremely tough for us to come back from 1-0 down with a man down, and obviously they're probably thinking in the back of their minds, what if this happens in the other game? What if this happens? But come half time, obviously they're starting to get the scores come through. I'm guessing they're starting to feel a bit more a little bit more relaxed. Okay, look, if we do lose, we do lose. We can still continue this. You know, you're thinking from a Leighton Orient fan's point of view, though, you want your team to go out there and play, but we nullified them. That's the thing. Even though they had 10 men can be really difficult to break down. We were nullifying them at the end of the day, and that's what you want to see our team do against the team that have literally won the league. We were the better team, even though we're down to 10 men. We were still the better team. I will say I was very frustrated with the last 10 minutes, mainly because, in my argument, is when you've paid money to watch a game of football, you want to see them play football. Even if it had been at half speed, I would like to have seen a bit more attacking, at least a couple of attempts on goal, not them just passing it around. But I also do understand the whole, you know, it had been 25 minutes, players are going to get injured. But I think that was more frustration on the night. That's why I was a bit, you know, I think I said something at the time. But yeah, I was just more a bit frustrated that we were 2-0 up. I wanted it to be 3-0, you know.
Fair enough. Okay, we're going to go into a short break now. Yeah, obviously the AC93 club. I've been impressed with it this season. I did the hospitality for the Tranmere game, and it was very, very good. It was very good, very actually good. So yeah, if you get a chance next season, I'd recommend it. So yeah, the AC93 club. Here it is.
Give me what I want, give me what I need. Give me what I want you all over me. Give me what I want, give me what I need. Give me what I want you all over me. I want your body, all of my body. Come on, give it to me, come on, give it to me. I want your body, all of my body. Come on, give it to me, come on, give it to me. I want you, na na na, all of my na na na. I want you, all of my na 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 na. I want you, na na na, all of my na na na. I want you, all of my na 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 na. I want you, na na na, all of my na na na. I want you, all of my na 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 na. I want you, na na na, all of my na na na. I want you, all of my na na na.
idea of. Come on, what are you doing?
Welcome back everyone to Lookback Live on the ME7 podcast. So we've spoken about the season, we've gone through it all, we all know who won at the Player of the Year awards. Glenn Morris obviously taking away the biggest trophy of the Player of the Year this year. John Jeffries taking away the Young Player of the Year. But we're going to do a little round table rating system based on every single player that's played for us this season. I'll let you off if you forget some of these have played for us, but you've got to remember the first season was what it was, the first half of it. But on a positive note, we've got a nice easy one to start. We'll go with Lewis and we'll go to Reece, James and Matt. This one, rating out of 10 for you each, should be the easiest one we're going to have. That'll be number 1, Glenn Morris.
Yeah, Glenn Morris, Player of the Year, as you mentioned, got my Player of the Year vote. Yeah, it was a very solid addition. We shouldn't forget that he wasn't supposed to be our number 1 this year. Maynard Brewer obviously got injured in pre-season and Glenn Morris came in. We luckily have a very decent understudy who did very well when Morris wasn't available in Jake Turner. But yeah, very pleased with Morris's performance. Very happy to see him get another year and hopefully be our number 1 for another year. What do you want to rate out of 10?
Yes.
Yeah, 9 out of 10.
Strong start, Reece. Agree?
8.
8.
Yeah. Still very good. Still very good.
Yeah, I'll go 8.
Matt?
8.5.
I'd go with an 8 as well. Consensus overrules.
Okay.
Next up, probably one of maybe the player of the second half of the season. To be honest, one of the most improved ones, and that would be Chad Alexander Lewis. Obviously, didn't start the season too well, but then who did? But there's been some turnaround from the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned before. At one point, it was pretty much a fullback Robbie McKenzie plus whoever was struggling less out of Tutonda and Alexander. But yeah, as soon as the turnaround came, Alexander was central to that, and I think it's fair to say he's our first choice right back now, playing with a lot of confidence. And yeah, tough one on the overall sort of assessment of the season, but I think based on how he improved, 7, fair, do you think?
I'd go along with it. I would.
Yeah, 7. I'd agree.
Yeah, I'd agree. 7.
I was going to say 6, but
6 is a bit off.
No, I would say second half of the campaign definitely. If you go based on his first half, you'd probably give him a 4 or 5. But his second half of the campaign, he really has stepped up, and I think he's made that right back position.
well, he was at fault for the goal at Wimbledon on Henry Day, which was my birthday, so it was some bad blood. I said as much to him in person, so he knows where he stands. Next one, probably someone I've described as the funniest player to ever play for Gillingham Football Club, rightly or wrongly. That would be David Tutonda, Lewis.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Hit and miss. I think we're pretty unanimous that we're surprised he's been offered a new contract or he's in these talks. I think I've said that I would rather, I hope it's not just Tutonda and McKenzie if he does stay for the left back options next year. I'd hope we get another one in. Are we going to go to other people first as well? Because I feel a lot of pressure giving the ratings first, but I think probably a below average season, probably 5 out of 10.
Here's a question just before you go, Reece. With Tutonda, are you surprised the negotiations have seemingly taken as long as they are? I think on the season he's had, he's probably quite fortunate to be offered one, to the point where I thought it would just be, here you go, and he'd be like, okay, I'll take that then. I'm surprised it's lasted as long as it is.
There is that, but I suppose we don't know what his geographical situation is. Yeah. We don't know how long we've offered him a contract for. We might have only offered him another year. He might want more than that. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit, but it's the same with McDonald as well. You know, everyone else is sorted, and we're still waiting on them too. But yeah, on to Tonda. You're right. He's fun to watch, but not always for the right reasons from my point of view. But he did score that goal at Colchester. I'll give him an extra half point for that. I'll give him 5.5.
With his head, imagine that. James?
Yeah. Like Harris described in the fans forum, it's either Dave or Donald. You don't know who you're going to get. I think at times he can be one of the better left backs in League Two, but then at times he could be the worst left back at League Two. I think like Reece says, it's like we don't know his contract situation. I wouldn't drag it out too long because there's much better out there. So I am surprised that he's even in talks in it. But yeah, fair. I'll give him 5 personally.
Matt, just before we give your vote, I'll put this question to you. Do you think, because I've certainly think, I think everyone might agree on this, I think with Dave, he's probably, our opinion is probably more wing back, good option, left back, not so much.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think as a winger, I think would be, because he's really good going forward. I think actually he's quite good going forward, but defensively, I'm not always sort of happy when somebody's attacking, thinking that he could get quite beat because he could beat so quite easily. I would kind of agree with you guys in the sense of his rating. I'd think sort of 5.5 is what I would have given him. Am I surprised he's been offered a new contract? No. Am I surprised he's not already signed it? Yes, because if he was good to stay, for me, he's staying as sort of the understudy. Where he's not going to be our first choice left back. I do think he would be a good guy though to have around the team, and I think that's I'm going to keep going back to it. I think the team bond, whether you're playing or not, that's going to be huge, and I think that's something that Harris is kind of alluding to with some of the signings and the players that he wants to keep on.
I think I'll go 5.2. 0.2 because he's a nice bloke. Yeah. Next one, someone who was obviously part of the team, my first summer signing, part of the team for the vast majority of the first half of the season, found bits here and there before post-January, and that is Will Wright.
Yeah, Will Wright, he's still someone I don't think anyone really knows his best position. Maybe we haven't even seen him in his best position. When he signed, Harris kept referring to him as a right centre-half, almost as if in a back three, which is where he played mostly for Dagenham. Started the season at right back, and I thought he was a bit suspect defensively. We know the sort of delivery he's got, and we will rely on that a lot for the goals we did manage to score or chances we did manage to create at the start of the season. Rightly lost his place, I think. He was doing okay next to Max Amer before Conor Masterson came in. He is more a centre-back than a right-back, I think, but we also saw in recent games he came on towards the back end of the season that he did struggle a little bit. So I think he's a good signing. He could be a shrewd footballer. He's not exactly young. He's going to be in reserve next year if he is here. I'd quite like to see him in midfield, but we're spoiled for options there as well now. I think I'd give him a 6, but he's got a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, Bruce?
Yeah, I'd go along with that, to be honest. First half of the season, I think I made a joke a couple of times, it was quite worrying that he was probably our most creative player, despite the fact he was a centre-back most of the time, because I think he set up our first goal of the season, didn't he? Cashkit's header from a free kick I think he put in. Obviously he scored a free kick here in one of the Paint Pot games, whatever it's called now. Scored the penalty at Swindon, so he has contributed. Like Lewis says, once Masterson signed, he was always going to end up finding himself out the team eventually. Has had good moments, has had shaky moments, as you'd probably expect from a player that's stepping up from the National League. Yeah, I think there's something there to work with, but like Lewis says, he'll have to work quite hard if he wants to be first choice next season. So I'll probably go along with middle of the road 6 out of 10 as well, really. 6.
6, yeah. I think he's got a wicked delivery on him, but as the guys have alluded to, obviously when Masterson came in, he wasn't going to get into the squad. You're not going to drop Amor, you're not going to drop Masterson, but I do hope he stays here next season because I think he could definitely be a really good cover for us.
Yeah, much like we said with Dom Jeffries, it will come on to a bit later on. It was key to remember it is only the first season in Football League football for Will. Yeah, next my player of the year, I think you said your second choice player of the year, Reece, and that is Max Amer.
Yes, a player that over his 9 years he's been playing at Priestfield. I've given him an awful lot of stick, probably 95% stick most of the time. But no credit to him this season. He's stepped up to the plate. The first half of the season was a struggle, and even during the first half of the season, a lot of people were blaming Max Amer for a lot of the problems. But I always maintained that defensively wasn't our problem. It's quite glaringly obvious to see that. Has he made mistakes at times this season? Yes, he's made a couple. The Bradford game here, the one that immediately comes to mind. But we're playing in League Two. They all done it. Masterson did it the last home game here. He lost his man from a corner, cost us a goal. So it happens. But I think generally this season he's been steady. He's been reliable. So what did I gave Morris 8, didn't I? And he was my number 1. So 7.5 for him.
Because we have to get on to transfer targets a bit later on. I'm going to give you all individual players in a sense of speed up process because there are a lot of players in here that, yeah.
What we're not talking about, yeah.
Lewis will give you Sean Williams.
Yeah, Sean Williams. I think I personally expected to see a sort of midfield core of Williams and O'Keefe for most of the season. I thought, in terms of how experience goes, I thought that was pretty solid midfield. Didn't materialise at all. I thought he really struggled in the first half of the season and he didn't perform up to what we were sort of expecting from him. But second half of the season, he essentially became captain and he stepped it up. I'm not as big of a fan of him as I think others are. I think sometimes he's quite slow to get to the ball, but you can see his quality, you can tell his experience, you can tell his sort of reading of the game is very good. And yeah, he's a good player, and I think he's, a lot of people have referred to Ethan Coleman sort of learning off him. I'm not sure there are many better mentors at this level. So yeah, decent Sean Williams, good squad player, good player to have around. I think 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. James, the man whose future still remains a bit unclear, Alex McDonald.
Yeah, it's a difficult one with Macca because you say statistically that he probably deserves another deal, but would I give him 2? No, I wouldn't give him 2. Maybe he's holding out for that. Maybe it's more money. No idea. But Macca's a frustrating one because I think for us he's either a 4 out of 10 or he's an 8 out of 10. He's never in the middle. But when he fancies it, he's got one of the best deliveries at this level, without a shadow of a doubt, and he's contributed to a lot of our goals and a lot of our chances. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I'd keep Macca on the basis of our terms, not his. But in terms of ratings, I think I'd give him a 7 out of 10.
Matt, you've kind of been shafted on this one, I can't lie to you. You've got half a season to work with Stuart O'Keefe.
10 out of 10? No, look, I mean, to be honest, the half of the season, for the first half of the season, he wasn't great. He wasn't. I mean, I think none of the team were. There was a couple of games where I sort of vaguely remember him sort of just being lost almost in the middle of the park. But it was unfortunate to see it happen that way because look at what he did for us last season, look what he did for us the season before. We would have all loved to have seen him play that last game, but yeah, he's only played, I think 20 games for us in that first half of the season. I'm going to have to give him a 6, but I'm sorry to see him go, I've got to say that.
Yeah, of course, unfortunately, Stu. We'll be leaving at the end of the season as confirmed by Neil Harris. Good one for you, Reece. Ben Reeves.
Has he played this season? A player that I'm sure he's had quality during his career, but I always thought he was a little bit of a fancy sideways and backwards pass merchant. He was meant to be this creative sort of number 10, who I always felt like, other than one goal at Cheltenham last season, never really looked like he was going to score a goal, never really created anything. But obviously his season this year was cut short by injury, unfortunately for him. Obviously what the future holds for him beyond now, we don't know yet. But yeah, he was only playing in the first half of the season when we was terrible, and he wasn't pulling up any trees in that team. So 3 out of 10.
Lewis, I would usually make this one non-applicable, but given we had the conversation about left backs, and although he hasn't played for us much this season, he is a left back who has run promotion from League One forward Charlton. He's had pedigree, just struggles with injuries. I think, to be fair to him, the performance you see, he's done okay, and that is Lewis Page.
Yeah, he's done okay. He's got, like you just mentioned there, Owen, he's got a history of success in the Football League. You know, fitness is always the problem. Took him a while to get up to speed, a handful of appearances. He did okay when he played. He won the penalty, you know, last weekend, that sort of thing. If we are looking at one more left back, I mentioned earlier, you know, if Tutonda's going to be back up, we've got McKenzie in reserve, that sort of thing. If we do want one more, you know, we should be looking at better, someone more reliable, someone that can be relied on to consistently perform. You know, as you said, it would have been not applicable, but I'll give him a 5 just out of pure fact that he didn't really do anything wrong, but he also didn't really make an impact.
I believe he played in the same Charlton winning promotion side as George Laptis. A bit of useless trivia for you.
Ben Reeves as well, maybe?
Oh yeah, how does he fit that game? Sorry Benny for listening. 2 good ones for you boys actually. James will give you can have Dom Jeffries.
Alright. Yeah, he's done well, hasn't he? He's done well this season. Obviously it was a bit unfortunate that he got himself injured on the first day of the season, and then I don't think we saw him for a couple of months, maybe. But then he sort of got himself back into the side sort of after Christmas and become a regular, and I thought he was one of our best players. I remember watching him for Brentford B in a London Senior Cup game literally a few months before we signed him, and he was the best player on the pitch that night. And he's everything a Gills player that you'd want. He's athletic, he runs through brick walls, but he's also got the technical ability to go with it. And I think if he has a proper pre-season underneath him, under Neil, I think he will end up going for a lot of money. He's a good age, and if he can sort of cut out, probably the one thing I would say about Dom is that he'll run himself into a situation where he'll then lose it in an area where he maybe shouldn't. And I think if he cuts it out of his game where he takes people on but then knows what to do with it at the same time, he will go right to the very top. I will give Dom an 8.
So not Harry Redknapp talking about Lampard.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Matt, we've given you Robin McKenzie.
Robin McKenzie, I think, obviously, the start of the season, he hadn't signed for us, obviously, straight away. He decided he was going to see what else was out there, and I'll be honest, I wasn't sort of fussed at the time. I would have liked him to have stayed, but if he wasn't going to stay, I wasn't fussed. But to get him back, I think we were all secretly a little bit happy inside. He had a very good season, actually. Obviously, he's been utilised all over the place along that back line. I'd give him a 7 for this season, but obviously, the fact he signed up for next season, whether he becomes one of our first choice, I don't know. I think he's more natural. His natural position is more like defensive midfield, isn't it? More defensive. So whether he's going to get moved more into that position, I don't know. But yeah, I think I'd give him a 7 out of 10 for this season, and let's hope he improves next season as well.
Our next 2 players, 2 of the final signings in January, not at the massive amount of game time, but from what they've shown in those games, there's certainly promise. Lewis, we'll go with you for Ethan Coleman.
I'm a big fan of Ethan Coleman. When he signed, I think it came out of the blue. It was just before the fans forum, wasn't it, the first one? And it was one of these players. He was one of these players who we thought was going to be for the future. He knew Kenny Jackett really well from his time at Orient. Been playing regularly for Bromley, and along with Jaden Clark, we thought, you know, he'll be one that's going to play in the future. He didn't make the squad for the first couple of games. I think his debut was almost worked up to, and he was good. And I think he's come a long way in a short period of time. He's still early 20s, and I think he's a very good option in midfield, defensive midfield. Mentioned him when I was talking about Sean Williams, that they're quite a good, left and right sort of options for that area, and for Williams to sort of tutor him. And I think against Salford he showed real authority, and I thought he was the best player on the pitch for us. And I'm a big fan of his. He didn't have too much game time, as you said. I want to give him above average, so I'll give him a 6.5.
Right, Ben. Race, another player joined at the same time. Recently made his EFL debut. He's had a couple of appearances now. Someone who's going to be in the first team picture next season. That would be Jaden Clark.
Yeah, very difficult to give a rating for because we have obviously only seen him a couple of times. But it was interesting. Obviously, he got a start last week, and I had this vision that I thought he was going to be sort of more of a wide player, but he played really central last week, as if he was sort of a fourth midfield player. Didn't do anything overly spectacular in the game, but also didn't really do anything wrong. So no, like Lewis said, he's one for the future, so he's not one I'm going to judge too much on sort of probably 100 minutes of football that he's played for us this season. But hopefully he can take that next step and be part of the group next season, because the reviews of him is that he's a good creative player, and one of the things that we've said we still need from the second half of the season is a little bit more creativity. So hopefully he can come into that. I wouldn't know what number to put on him, because I feel like I'm being arsed saying 5 because he's not really contributed anything when he's not really been given the platform to do it.
No, so a lot of promise there. If boys don't mind, I'll take the next one. I think you can guess who it is.
I wonder.
Scott Cashkin.
No, we're not there yet. So Lewis Walker, obviously, it's been a standout year for him. Someone who's shown a lot of promise. Obviously, was a victim of a horrific challenge. Could have ended his career. It's upset me very much in the Dagenham game. But look, Lewis is someone who is going to benefit from having better players around him. It's a shame we didn't get to see that second half of the season due to obviously that horrific murder attempt we saw in the Dagenham game. But he's someone with a lot of potential. I think he's had good performances up to that point, to the injury. I think he's someone who's going to have a strong year next year, so I think 10.
Lewis, do us a favour, can you just send him a signed shirt, please? Because that's all he wants.
Already asked.
Already asked. What did he say, no?
She's given them away.
Oh, there you go then.
Oh, no.
Says it all, doesn't it?
But you see, like my penalty, and he wouldn't be able to say that to you. So. Isn't it a very good one for you, James? Our first signing of January, as I said earlier, scored 6 goals since arriving, made a big impact, and that is Tom Nichols, of course.
The signing of the second half of the season, I think for me, transformed our season. Absolutely transformed it, and not only from his goals. I think for me, he epitomises a genuine forward. He works he defends from the front. You weren't getting that from the forwards at the start of the season. Sorry, mate, from Lewis's point of view. But you just weren't getting it. Mandron was just utterly hopeless. He just was not good enough at all. And Tom come in, and the thing I like about Tom is that he is a defender's nightmare. His movement on and off the ball is brilliant. And when he's been leading the line on his own, his hold-up play's been excellent. And yeah, I think Tom it can only get even better. Could he add a few more goals to his game? Definitely. Is he? I think he's one point that potentially could improve on it is just taking his chances. I think there's been a couple of times where, like the one at Salford, he should score. So I think that's the area to improve. But I think for me, we couldn't have asked for any better from Tom. So I think fair to give him a 9.
Big score.
What I will say for Tom, to be fair, is that despite the fact he was only here for half season, he was 3rd for me player of the year, because we was that bad in the first half of the season. We couldn't score, and him changing. You said he got 6 goals, he got 5 or 6 assists. For me, he was vital in us doing what we did in the second half of the season. So yeah, I'd have gone as far as having him right up there for player of the year, to be fair.
Yeah, we'll get into this when we do targets, but I think if we do end up signing a 20-goal season striker, I think people will remember very quickly, despite all that fanfare having someone come in when we start the season, they'll remember very quickly just how good a player we already have in Nichols. Matt, this isn't as bad a one as it sounds, because he was playing regularly for the first half of the season and sort of disappeared off the face of the earth, scored one of the penalties at Brentford, Hakeem Adenican.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, that first half of the season, I mean, I don't think we ever saw his true best. I think we saw glimpses of what he could be. But yeah, I never sort of thought we saw his sort of the best of him, because he came here with a lot of hype. I remember people saying, "Oh, I can't believe we've got him! What a great catch!" I remember the goal he scored in the game, the Dagenham game. Obviously, right at the end of it, I think that's really the only sort of memorable moment I remember from his time being here. Look, not one that I'm going to miss, I'll be honest, and I think he played in a poor team in a poor first half of the season for Gills. I think I can give him a 5.
Right, we're just going to get through a few of them that respectfully don't really need to be talked about. So Jordan Green will skip 1.
2.
Generous.
Scott Cashgit will skip. Jake Turner, solid.
Jake Turner, brilliant in the cup games. For me, he's got to be 7, 8 out of 10. And that Bradford game, thanks to him, I think that was because we got through. I think he kept us in the game that day.
Yeah, we need to get to targets, so we'll just go the last few players. I'll just give a number and then we'll move on. Start from you, Matt, and go around. Conor Marson.
8.
8.
Yeah, 8.
So skip Scott Cashgit. Ollie Hawkins, Lewis.
I'd go 8 as well, because we were so used to Mandron, and Hawkins was absolutely a level above of what Harris was after.
Yeah, I'll probably go 7.5.
Yep, 7.
7.
Josh Chambers didn't play. Tristan Abraham's not enough appearances. Tim Dieng.
7.
7.5. I think people underrate the end.
Yep, 7.
7.5, yeah.
One of James's favourite players coming up. Aidan O'Brien.
7 as well, I'd say.
6.5.
7.
6.5.
Just a quick one answer each. Do we keep him?
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
If he can have a full pre-season underneath him, and he can show in every pre-season game that he can get through them, and he's fit enough, yes.
Okay, and final one before we move on to targets. George Lapsley.
I'm going to have to put him up at 8. I'll explain my reasonings afterwards.
I think 8's a tad generous, I must admit.
6.
I'm going to go 6.5.
I'd say 7. He scored goals.
I'll explain my reasoning. He's been playing in the position that is not his best position, and I still think he's done really, really well in those positions. And when we get him in his natural position next year, which I think is what we're going to go down the route of, I think we're going to see an amazing player.
Yeah, certainly someone who's got a big next season ahead of him. So all the boys were given a task before we got involved today, apart from Rick. He's going to be passing judgment on some of the player specifics he pointed out in terms of potential targets for next year. There was a very helpful list by the Real EFL account who keeps updating all the releases of whatever from every EFL club, which made for a very interesting list and a very helpful one as well. Yeah, we'll go for a few picks of which everyone's gone for. We'll go this way round. So Matt, who is your call it like the NFL? Who's your number 1 draft pick?
I mean, there are. It's Alfie May. He's the one that I would have straight away. The chances of him coming here is probably less than 0, but he would be the one that I would cry out for. If he came to us, we've won the league.
What I'd say, I don't think it's as unrealistic an option as you think.
Yeah.
I think obviously you read articles that he's been linked with championship teams.
Yeah,
The thing I've said to other people is that obviously championship clubs have a much wider pool of players to go for than clubs like us because they're higher up the chain. So if we may be more willing to pay Alfie May 6 or 7 grand a week than a championship team is, at 29 he's probably only got one big contract in him. Close to home, he may decide that actually if he wants a good money move, but also wanting to play here because we have signed players on more money than we used to in January, but we've got it right because they want to be here as well. I wouldn't completely rule it out.
No, as I said, I don't want to completely rule it out. I just feel that he is that good of a player that if a championship team does come in, I can't see him coming to. He's the one I'd love, and if we got him, as I said, I think we're up there. But if we don't, then so be it.
Yeah, I think they're certainly going to be one who's on the lips of a lot of Gillingham fans and a lot of other fans around the country as well. A prolific season once again for Cheltenham in League One. James, I can see your first choice there. If you want to reveal it to us.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Sam Nombi from Exeter. He was linked with us in January actually. I think there was a slight rumour that we'd gone in for him in January. He's Tim Dieng's best mate, and they used to live together down in Exeter. So his record at Exeter is 66 games, 23 goals. So it's nearly a goal every other game. Yeah, I would. Exeter must probably hate us because they thought they had a chance with Masterson, which was never going to happen. We went and then brought one of their best midfielders and paid the contract out. I would like to go and see him. I think he's a bit more of a realistic target than May, and I think he's a perfect forward. He's a forward that he's a bit of a nuisance, but he's a natural goal scorer. Whether Exeter, I think we're in a position now that I think a lot of clubs. We had the conversation where it would be a case of before Brad and Shannon come in, it was a case of we might be able to get him. I think we're in a position now to sort of walk into sort of any League One or League Two club within reason and go, we'll have you and we'll pay X, Y and Z. Because I think we're in that financial position now. We agree, I think we have that armour to do that. Whether we then have the armour to convince them is obviously another. But I think that's another pulling power for Neil Harris. I think Harris has that pulling power to say, come and play for us. I think a lot of players are, half the battle is sort of selling the football club to them, and I think that is the pulling power of Hess Jacket and Neil, is that they all deeply, deeply care about Gillingham Football Club and they can send them an ambition. And the ambition now is that we have an owner where it effectively, the ambition's 1 year here, isn't it, for next year? I
think you make a good point about walking into League One clubs, because you look at, we went and got Dieng from Exeter, who was League Two team of the year last year, doing well in League One.
Yeah.
Conor Masterson could have walked into a League One club. We are almost looking at League One players now where we can pay that fee.
Yeah.
And as you say, a lot of people are thinking it's 1 year in League Two, you're back in League One. We've got the pulling power of a good atmosphere, a good squad, a really good manager, a good project. So I think looking at League One teams or players is probably the best option.
Yeah, I think some of our fans are, I don't blame them for it either, still subconsciously. I think when we talk about targets, they're looking at us in terms of the position we'd be in financially a few years ago, just because we were so used to it. But reality is we're shopping in a different market now, and on that market, Lewis, who is on your shopping list? It's good though.
Someone I wanted to pick out was just been released by Portsmouth, Clark Robertson, left-sided centre back, fill in at left back. You make a really good point of thinking of what market we're looking in. A lot of people, myself included somewhat, make the habit of looking at the retained list and just seeing who's been released and who we can pick up. Robertson, he's had a few injury issues I think, but he did well at Rotherham, did well at Portsmouth. Centre back isn't necessarily a position we need to strengthen anymore. We've got Masterson and Amar, who are probably going to be our first choice options next year. But I think if you really wanted to upgrade and get someone, top sort of ability, Robertson would be a good option. Quite local to where he was before, and I think him and Masterson can make a really good partnership. Being left-sided helps a lot as well, I think.
So my first one is going to be someone who, by all accounts, might be heading towards Wrexham by the sounds of it, but I'm unsure in it in a minute, and it is a very experienced wide player in Plymouth winger Danny Mayer. This is someone who's got a plethora of experience in getting out of his division. He's won promotions with Plymouth, with Bury, back when they just come back now, fair play to them, well done. But yeah, Danny Mayer is a very dynamic player for this level. He's someone who's been there and done it. As I said, he's won promotions, he knows what it's like to be in a team that can get the job done. And when we look at the signings we made back in 2012-13, we brought in that experience on top of what was already a decent existing squad, and I think that's what you need. As much as we want to go and get young, exciting players, which we still can do, I do think we need players who know what it takes to get out of this division. And I think Danny May is someone who's got a knack for a spectacular goal. He's a good player to have with his experience as well. Might be a bit of an older side, but I still think you need that in your team with, as the experience. I think someone as tricky down the wing, who can score a good goal, good passing range, good crossing range, and obviously experience of Danny May. I think he'd be one of my top targets. Realistic targets, I'm not so sure because, as I said, the rumour mill is suggesting Wrexham for him, but I suppose we'll find that out when we find that out. Matt, who is your number 2?
The next one I'm going to go for is a player who has played here previously under Neil Harris, and that is Ben Thompson.
Oh, go ahead. Nick James is not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you going to use
That's
that
all right,
one?
mate.
Okay.
You go for it.
I mean, I can change and go, no.
If you want to go for it.
Look, obviously, I've got here 26 appearances this season, most of them off the bench. Probably not what he expected when he went there. I thought at the end of last season, ultimately the only reason we only went down on the final day of the season was pretty much because of him in that midfield, really kept us together. I think he's a great character to have around the team as well. Obviously worked with Neil Harris quite a few times, knows the club. Would he be willing to obviously step down into League Two? He's not played many games this season. I hope so. That would be, for me, I think him, imagine him, Williams, Dieng, Jeffries in midfield, just what a midfield, with Lapsley as well, just what a midfield that would be. Whether he wants to come to us or not, it's up to him, but I'd love to see him here next year.
I'd be shocked if he isn't here first game of next season, I must admit. I also think it'd be a perfect, if Macca decides to move on, I think it'd be a perfect, in terms of he's tenacious, he works hard, he's physical, he's not tall, but he protects the ball really, really nicely, he can pick a pass. I think if we was to lose Macca, getting Thompson back.
Plus, we know from obviously we were all involved in a conversation with Harris at Player of the Year. The relationship he has with Ben Thompson is incredibly strong, even to the point where he was saying to us when that he could well have had him for this season, but he didn't really want to sell him the promise that we were going to do anything. Yeah, and he didn't feel like it was right to bring him. But James,
I'm going to go for Jack Curry. I think he scored against us on opening day for Wimbledon. Attacking fullback, and an area that we need to strengthen. I think obviously, like Lou said about Shea, I feel like at Salford, you notice the moment Shea come onto the pitch because naturally we just got defensively much better down that right hand side. He's also proved that technically from set piece and dead balls he's very good, Shea. But I think obviously Robbie, we don't know where he's going to be used. I still think if Robbie is used, he needs to be a right back. But I think Jack Curry can play either side, and has played either side for Wimbledon. For me, he's been one of the most impressive fullbacks down here that I've seen. And got plenty of assists at Wimbledon in obviously a mid-table side. So I think for me, fullback is definitely an area we need to strengthen, and I think Jack would definitely strengthen that.
Yeah, especially at Wimbledon end of the season, I think we'd be a much more attractive proposition. Final two ones before we finish off for today. Lewis, will go with your one.
I'm going to go with Matty Taylor. Is that your one?
Is that your one?
I was praying you came to me first because I thought you might say that.
I've got a reserve, go on.
But yeah, I think we've got to look at that striker. Matt mentioned the 20-goal a season striker. Would be fantastic. I think there's a place for that. Assuming the likes of Kashkir's going to leave. Hawkins, you got sort of the target man. Nichols very much more involved, almost more deep lying. Lewis Walker as well, and I think Joe Bode. But there's one more, and you want that clinical striker. I believe we're looking at one as well. And Taylor, he's had his ups and downs off the pitch, but Bristol Rovers, Oxford, he's a clinical striker. And I think he'd fit that number 9 role perfectly that we need to come in and score those goals.
Obviously not that he had the most prolific season though this year.
Of course not,
14 games and only 4 goals. Whether that, I don't know if he's had in injuries.
No, that was a loan spell with Port Vale. That's January onwards.
Yeah, he went on loan.
I think he scored 10 before that for Oxford, something like that.
Right.
I might be wrong. But I'm going to counteract your striker, Rick, with a striker pick. And we're going back down to Devon. We're going back to Plymouth. And I've gone for a 23-year-old striker called Luke Jeffcott. He has been released by Plymouth this week. Played in League Two this just gone season with Swindon Town on loan. Played 32 games, scored 7 goals. But obviously, Swindon's second half of the season was pretty bad. So I suppose we can take that into account. I don't think he started most weeks, especially when Charlie Austin came into the building. But as someone who's only 23 years of age still, with stats through 2 full seasons with Plymouth. Well, I'll be saying that in the 2021 year, he scored 16 goals in 41 appearances, and followed that up with a further 10 goals and 4 assists in 40 games the season after. So I think that goal record for someone who's only 23, remember, would make it a good signing for us for 3 reasons. One is a free transfer, so there's no immediate risk. 2 is at a good age, which means if he does perform well and hits the heights that he did in League 2 with Plymouth with us, then it could be a potential good sell-on value as well. And 3, I think, he's proven he can score goals at EFL level at such a young age as well. So I think there's probably a bit more untapped potential with him as well. And I think he's someone that, under the tutelage of Neil Harris, a former striker, I think we can get some more out of. Bruce, what are your thoughts on those final 3 picks before we head off?
We'll have a lot of strikers if all your. But no, there's some good ones in there. Let's be honest. Some May, Thompson, whatever, may be more ambitious than some of the others, but all would be a step up from what we were signing this time a year ago.
It's just refreshing to be able to say those names and not think, well, there's no chance we can get him. Whereas actually we say it now and think, they'll take him.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah, thank you all for watching the ME7 podcast. Look Back Live. It's the final one of the season. We are not back now until the end of August, as obviously we will then look back at the first month of the season. But yeah, we'd like to say from everyone here at the ME7 podcast, thank you so much this season for all of your support. It has been absolutely crazy, the amount of views that we're getting, the amount of listens that we're getting on our Twitter Spaces, and obviously the Look Back Lives. We're averaging, on an average, every single show, whether it's a Twitter Space or a Look Back Live, we're averaging between 1,000 and 2,000 people every single episode that we do, which is absolutely mental. We can't thank Chris Tiger enough for his sponsorship and love and care this season. We can't thank enough Nick and Block for all of the Look Back Live shows that we've done this season. Without him, this wouldn't have been possible. So thanks so much to Nick. And we can't thank the football club enough. The football club have been so supportive for us for the second half of the season, allowing us to use the facilities. So without them, these dropbacks that we were able to have throughout the season wouldn't have happened. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Another season in League 2, and hopefully only one more season in League 2. And hopefully it'll be a promotion season next season. Hopefully. So thank you for watching. You've been watching the ME7 podcast. Have a good rest of the weekend. Goodbye.